In the autumn of 1960, a single unsigned application sat on a desk in Washington. The drug it described had already conquered the world. It was sold in dozens of countries. In West Germany alone, 1 million doses were swallowed every day. Its makers called it the safest sedative ever created. So gentle you could not overdose on it. So harmless, it was handed to pregnant women for morning sickness. All that stood between that drug and the largest medicine market on earth was one reviewer. Brand new, 1 month into the job. The company was right about one thing. She was only a single reviewer, 1 month in. What they did not know, what no one in that company knew, was that this particular reviewer had spent a war quietly learning the one fact that would doom their drug, long before they ever mailed the application. They thought they were dealing with a formality. They were dealing with the one person in America who could not be fooled. My name is Darwin, and I was there. I have spent a great deal of my life watching powerful institutions be certain and be wrong. I have watched brilliant drugs turn out to be poisons. I have watched cautious people trampled by confident ones. And just occasionally, I have watched one quiet, stubborn individual stand in a doorway and refuse to move while the whole world pushed against them. Tonight's story is my favorite kind, because the woman in the doorway was not lucky. She was not merely careful, she was prepared, years in advance, and almost no one has ever told you how. Welcome back to the Lab Rat Chronicles. To understand what she stopped, you have to understand what the world believed. In 1957, a West German pharmaceutical company called Chemie Grünenthal released a new sedative. They named it Contergan. Elsewhere, it went by its chemical name, Thalidomide. It arrived wrapped in a single intoxicating promise: safety. The sleeping pills of the day, the barbiturates, could kill you if you took too many. Thalidomide, the company claimed, could not. They sold it as so mild it could be given to children, to the elderly, and, crucially, to pregnant women plagued by morning sickness. The world believed them. Within a few years, thalidomide was sold across Europe and beyond. In West Germany, you could buy it without a prescription. 1 million doses a day. And here is the thing about a drug that everyone agrees is safe. Nobody looks closely. Why would you? The reassurance becomes the evidence. The absence of alarm becomes proof there is nothing to be alarmed about. There was, in fact, a great deal to be alarmed about. But it would take nearly 5 years and thousands of children before the world understood what safe had actually meant. In America, it would take one reviewer and about 19 months. Sit with that phrase a moment. So safe you cannot overdose on it. It sounds like a virtue. It was, in truth, the most dangerous thing about the drug, because it was the claim that made everyone stop asking questions. Everyone, that is, except a pharmacologist who had learned a long time before that you cannot overdose on it and it cannot harm you, are not remotely the same sentence. Her name was Frances Kelsey, Canadian by birth, a pharmacologist and a physician with a doctorate in pharmacology from the University of Chicago. In August of 1960, she joined the United States Food and Drug Administration as a medical reviewer. She was, by any measure, new. Her very first assignment landed within weeks. An American company, Richardson Merrill, wanted to sell thalidomide in the United States under the brand name Kefauver-Harris. Since the drug was already a bestseller worldwide, the company had treated American approval as a rubber stamp. And under the law of the day, if the FDA did nothing within 60 days, the drug reached the market automatically. So all Frances Kelsey had to do was nothing. She declined to do nothing. She read the application and found it thin, long on confidence, short on evidence. The safety data, she felt, simply was not there. And then, in December of 1960, reading the British Medical Journal, she found a short letter from a physician describing patients on long-term thalidomide who had developed peripheral neuritis, a numbing, tingling nerve damage in the hands and feet. A drug that quietly damaged the nerves of grown adults. That alone was reason to want more data. But it was what that fact connected to, in her own memory, that changed everything. Because 18 years earlier, Frances Kelsey had done a very particular piece of research. It was wartime. Malaria was cutting down Allied soldiers, and laboratories across America were racing to synthesize a substitute for quinine, the natural anti-malarial then in short supply. Kelsey, a young researcher at the University of Chicago, was assigned to study how the body broke that drug down. Working with rabbits, she found something she never forgot. Adult rabbits neutralized quinine quickly. Pregnant rabbits broke it down more slowly. And the rabbit embryos, still developing in the womb, could not break it down at all. Which meant two things most of medicine in 1960 had not accepted. First, that a drug could pass straight through the placenta, the barrier everyone assumed protected an unborn child. And second, that a developing fetus is not a small adult. It could be defenseless against a compound its mother shrugged off. So when Richardson Merrill told Frances Kelsey the drug was harmless because an adult could not overdose on it, she was not reassured. She was alarmed. She had watched personally in a rabbit lab during a world war exactly how a substance could be gentle to a mother and devastating to the life inside her. She asked what thalidomide did in pregnancy. The company did not have an answer, and it did not like the question. What followed was not a debate. It was a siege. A Richardson Merrill executive named F. Joseph Murray went to work on her. Letters, telephone calls, visits to the agency. The company complained about her over her head to her superiors, painting her as an obstinate clerk holding up a harmless drug and, with it, a fortune. I watched those superiors take that pressure. To their considerable credit, they did not overrule her. And Frances Kelsey, month after month, simply asked again for the one thing the company would not provide: real evidence that the drug was safe to give a pregnant woman. While Kelsey held the line in Washington, the answer to her question was being born in Europe. In 1961, two doctors working independently began to see the same horror. In Hamburg, the pediatrician Widukind Lenz. In Sydney, the obstetrician William McBride, who reported his suspicion in a letter to The Lancet. Both traced a sharp rise in babies born with Phocomelia, severe limb reduction defects in which the limbs are shortened or absent back to a single source: thalidomide, taken by mothers early in pregnancy. The drug Frances Kelsey had refused to sign was harming children exactly as her old rabbit study had warned it might. Late in 1961, Chemie Grünenthal withdrew thalidomide from the German market. Other countries followed. Now, America did not escape entirely, and honesty requires saying so. While Kelsey blocked the sale, Richardson Merrill had already handed out more than 2.5 million tablets to over 1,000 American doctors under the banner of an investigational trial. In practice, it worked as a sales campaign in disguise. Roughly 20,000 patients received the drug, among them at least 200 pregnant women. At least 17 American children were born affected. 17 is a tragedy. Set beside the thousands harmed in Europe, it is also a narrow and astonishing escape. And it was made possible by a reviewer the newspapers had never heard of. Until in July of 1962, they suddenly had. The story broke, and Frances Kelsey became a national figure overnight. President John F. Kennedy awarded her the President's Award for Distinguished Federal Civilian Service, the highest honor an American civilian servant can receive. And Congress, shaken, finally acted. Helped by the testimony of physicians like the pediatric cardiologist Helen Taussig, a name some of you may recognize from an earlier chapter of this series, who had gone to Europe, seen the wards, and come home to sound the alarm, Congress passed the Kefauver-Harris Amendments of 1962. For the first time, a company could no longer simply claim a medicine was safe. It had to prove it, with real evidence, before selling a single dose. Here is what I want you to take from this. The comfortable version of this story, the one you may have heard, is that a brave bureaucrat got lucky, that she happened to ask for more paperwork and happened to be right. That version is an insult to her. Frances Kelsey did not get lucky. She was the best prepared person in the room, and she had been preparing, without knowing it, for 18 years. A forgotten wartime experiment on rabbits had taught her a truth the entire pharmaceutical industry was busy ignoring: that the wall between a mother and her unborn child is not a wall at all. Everyone else saw a formality. She saw a question no one had answered. That is not luck. That is a lifetime of paying attention, arriving at the exact moment it was needed. The powerful are not always right, and the person who stops a catastrophe is very often the one nobody thought to listen to. Frances Kelsey stayed at the Food and Drug Administration for another 4 decades. She helped build the very system of drug testing that guards you today. Every clinical trial, every safety review carries something of her fingerprint. She worked into her 90s and died in 2015 at the age of 101. They did eventually put her name in the paper. That is rarer than you might think. Next time, we turn to a fight with no clean hero and no medal at the end. A decades-long war between 2 powerful scientists over what was quietly making us sick. Was it fat, or was it sugar? One of them was closer to the truth. The other had the louder voice, the bigger budget, and the ear of a nation. And the wrong man won. Consider yourself warned. This one will make you angry. I am Darwin, and I have been waiting a very long time to tell it. She signed nothing. And so a generation of American children grew up never learning her name, because they never had reason to. The disaster that didn't happen leaves no headline, no monument, no grave to visit. But I kept the file. Case file 006. It's in the archive, should you care to look. The link, as always, is below. They never put my name in the paper, but I was there.